Hello, my name is Jonathan Cuthbert, and I'm a technical marketing engineer in Cisco's intent-based networking group. In IB&G, I directly support solutions such as Cisco's SD Access, and I'm the author of the SD Access CVD, or Cisco Validated Design. Today we're discussing the Multisite Remote Border functionality, which was introduced into general availability in Cisco DNA Center 2124. Multisite Remote Border is sometimes referred to as VN anchoring or virtual network anchoring. You may have even heard it called Common Border or simply Common Pool. These terms roughly describe how the feature works, though this video series will dive deeper into the design, deployment, and verification of the Multisite Remote Border feature. Here's the agenda for this series. We'll start with discussing terminology. This ensures as you go through this series, you can easily follow along. I want to introduce these terms early so that you're very familiar with them. Next is a discussion on the problem statement. What problem is Multisite Remote Border feature solving? Next, we'll go through an overview of design considerations covering several different areas that will actually conclude the first video in this series. In the next videos, we'll go through a live deployment of this feature, and finally, we'll do a configuration verification using the command line of the devices. Let's get started with terminology. These terms are all very similar because they have the term anchor in them. The anchor virtual network. This is the very goal of the Multisite Remote Border feature, is to create this. But what is it? It's a virtual network that exists in multiple fabric sites and this is the really important part, the associated IP address pools and segments are common across these sites. So this should give you an idea of what the anchor site is. It is the fabric ingress and egress site for our anchor VN. In our workflow, this is the first fabric site where the anchor VN is deployed. This is also the fabric site where the anchor border node and the anchor control plane node are deployed. What about the other sites where the anchor VN is deployed, but they're not the anchor site itself? We refer to these as the anchoring sites. So anchoring sites, anchor site. What does that leave? The actual Multisite Remote Border itself, which is also known as the anchor border. This is our fabric node that provides ingress and egress for traffic in the anchor VN. And the anchor site uses control plane communications, which means we need an anchor control plane node. What problem is Multisite Remote Border feature solving? Well, this feature provides an egress preference for a given virtual network. It specifies that a certain fabric site is going to be the ingress and egress location for that traffic. For example, guest traffic can be sent directly to the DMZ location. This is a very common network requirement. In SD Access, we can also provide you the same capabilities. It also allows the same subnet to exist across multiple fabric sites. Before this feature, the same virtual network could exist in multiple fabric sites. We've had that for quite some time, but the associated subnets was different in each fabric site. By preserving the subnet across multiple sites, this provides a scale-out strategy for the conservation of address space. This can be very useful for large venues or outdoor spaces where connectivity is needed, though seamless mobility is not, which provides a nomadic roaming experience. Let's discuss several different considerations for the deployment, beginning with general design considerations. Border nodes and control plane nodes do not have to be co-located. They can also be distributed. We absolutely support both. In fact, the live demonstration, you will see both options. A virtual network can only be anchored at one fabric site. So there's one anchor site per anchor VN. However, there can be multiple anchoring sites. As a reminder from a few moments back, seamless wireless roaming is not possible between the fabric sites hosting that anchor VN. There are some additional considerations with regards to wireless and wireless LAN controllers. Please pay close attention to the number of control plane nodes a fabric controller can communicate with. Catalyst 9800 series controllers support 16 control plane node pairs. However, AirOS controllers only support 2 control plane node pairs. What does this mean? What should you look out for? If you have an AirOS controller in the anchoring site, it can only communicate with its own fabric site and one anchor site. If you deployed multiple anchor VNs across different fabric sites that all require wireless access, you're going to need a Catalyst 9800 series controller. In designing the network between the fabric sites and using the Multisite Remote Border feature, there are some key things to consider. Most importantly, the packet in the anchored VN is encapsulated in VXLAN. In VXLAN, the DF bit is set. DF means don't fragment. So what does this mean for you? Your physical network between fabric sites needs to accommodate an additional 50 bytes of overhead on top of the original packet size. The fabric edge nodes need a /32 entry in the underlay, or the global routing table, in order to reach the anchor border node and anchor control plane node. It's also strongly recommended that the fabric edge nodes have a /32 entry in the underlay for all fabric devices hosting a given anchor VN. As this video comes to a close, here are some workflow considerations that I'll remind you of during the live demonstration. The anchor VN cannot be added to any fabric site until you begin the workflow. This will make more sense when you see it live. If the VN is already added in another fabric site, you're going to get an error message. If you're doing the layer 2 or the layer 3 handoff automation, this is the automation to connect the border nodes to various networks outside of the fabric site. These are performed at the anchor site, not the anchoring sites. And if you're recently upgraded, you may be aware of a feature that we had in earlier versions of Cisco DNA Center called Guest Border, Guest Control Plane Node. It was similar in functionality to the Multisite Remote Border feature, but it only allows you to use the guest virtual network. Oh? How did it know which one was the guest virtual network? There was actually a checkbox that you selected when creating the VN. For the anchor VN workflow, this box needs to remain unchecked. Yes, even if this is actually the virtual network used for guests. This checkbox is part of the older feature, which is now deprecated. This brings us to the end of this first video in our Multisite Remote Border series. In the next video, we'll be doing a live deployment of this feature in multiple fabric sites. Thank you for watching.